Hey there, and welcome to Connect the Dots Learning Center podcast. I'm Stephanie Wagers, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a seasoned therapist, clinic owner, or just starting out, this podcast is your go to spot for insights, tips, and stories that'll help you connect the dots in your practice. Welcome back to Connect the Dots Learning Center podcast. Today's guest is Tricia Rogers, a seasoned speech language pathologist with over 30 years of experience and the creative mind behind Miss Tongue and Friends. Tricia has spent the second half of her career diving deep into myofunctional therapy, helping children and families improve their oral function, sleep, and speech through fun, research-backed tools. This one's packed with insights for anyone working with pediatric clients. Let's jump in. Welcome, Tricia Rogers, a speech language pathologist with 3 decades of experience and known as Miss Tongue and Friends, that you've created that. I'm excited to have you on today to talk specifically about your career in myofunctional therapy. But let's just kind of start back with your journey through speech therapy. So that the myofunctional therapy pieces kind of dominate the second half of your career. So what were you doing before? What led you to there? And then why did that take off?
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited about this conversation. So back when I started, so I got my undergraduate degree in speech pathology and my graduate degree. And when I started off, I worked in the schools for a little bit, but when I got into private practice or was working for a private practice clinician, I was very, very interested in the motor sensory part
Mhm.
of communication and speech. Language, yes, I loved working with the little ones who couldn't talk, a little bit of sign language to get them going, and very, very, but the more intelligible, the more I was like, let's do this. Apraxia, all of that. So I got tons of training in that because I was fascinated and I really wanted to help the kids to be able to communicate at
Mhm.
wherever they were as they were. So that's
Right.
how, so it was a very easy segue into oral myofunctional as a tool in my
Yeah.
practice because of that.
Right. Okay. So let's, for those of the listeners that maybe haven't heard of oral myofunctional therapy, you need like a degree just to say the word. We're going to call it OMD disorders. But can you kind of explain what it is and what it might look like in a child?
Yes, yes. So a simple definition or description of what OMDs are is if when there are patterns, behaviors, or habits that have potential of being detrimental to the child's well-being, their ability to sleep, their oral growth and development, or oral function, as in speaking, breathing, swallowing, chewing, all
Mhm.
of those. So that is a pretty simple, basic definition of what OMD or oral facial myofunctional disorders are. Now, what it would look like, one of the really uh, easiest to see or notice when you know to look for it is an open mouth posture. So we
Okay.
see if a child has breathing through their mouth breathing, their tongue is going to be down in the mouth because the only way to get the air in and down and to breathe that way is for the tongue to be down.
Okay.
So open mouth posture, breathing, mouth breathing. That's one. Another OMD actually is like thumb sucking. It's like a habit that is detrimental because it keeps the tongue low in the mouth, and it
Mhm.
also doesn't allow the tongue to be where it needs to be up on the palate to help form
Right.
the the dental arch the way in the palate the way we want it. So that's another one. And there are a lot of them, but those are basically and then just the tongue thrust swallow, as we call it,
Yeah.
is where the tongue is coming from the teeth or against the teeth or staying in the bottom of the mouth. And then honestly, chewing and eating challenges, not in the feeding, I'm not talking about feeding challenges or, that,
Right.
but chewing, and keeping the lips together for swallow so that it doesn't messy eating and things like that. Those are also OMDs.
Okay. Okay. So like snoring even, would that be
Yes.
something? Okay.
That is a red flag. Thank you for, yes. That's why these habits or behaviors or patterns are very detrimental, can be for children,
Hmm.
is because if they're, it can affect their sleep health, sleep disorder,
Hmm.
breathing, airway. It is all connected to that. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to get to these kiddos earlier,
Right. Because
because
then they might look like they have ADHD or something else because they're not sleeping.
exactly.
Interesting.
And cognitive issues too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if, I mean, academic, it's interesting because it can affect their academic abilities.
Right. So it's not necessarily impacting their speech, correct? It could just be
Yeah.
impacting other areas of their life, or do you see it impact their speech? I mean, obviously, like a tongue thrust or, yeah.
Yes. There are speech disorders that are secondary to oral
Okay.
myofunctional disorders. So
Okay.
not every child who has a speech uh, issue is going to have OMDs, but it's very likely that OMDs, they definitely affect speech. So like
Okay.
being also the big one is like you may have a child who can go through our Goldman Fristo or the
Mhm.
Arizona or any, and at the single word level, their sounds are like they're okay. And as you add complexity, as in more words in the utterance or the sentence or conversational level, that is where the clarity and the crispness of the
Mm.
speech can break. And, it's like, well, they can get it in the word, but they don't sound like it doesn't sound great in conversation. A lot of times is that's because the placement where the tongue is coming from when it's going to make the sounds is down in the mouth or is affected by an OMD.
Interesting. So,
Wow.
what part in your practice did you realize, gosh, you were starting to see themes develop with kiddos that you said, we really need to do something about this, or I need to, get more
So
educated in that.
yeah, yes, it was another speech pathologist who had had training in oral facial myofunctional therapy or OMDs. And she said to me, she was like, I don't know how I was able to do articulation therapy before I knew this. And I went,
Mhm.
I need to know about this. And that's it. I mean, because I'm like,
Break
well,
that down a little bit more for me.
I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'm doing like articulation therapy and I'm helping kiddos. It's
Yeah.
like, what am I missing that she knows?
Mm.
And what training has she had that I don't know about? And so in the early 2000s, I'm like, let me figure this out. Let me see what it is. And I have not looked back from that. And
Mhm.
in the point of specializing in my practice in only speech and oral facial myofunctional therapy from, you know, 2010, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
issues
So,
with getting it reimbursed?
oh my goodness. When I started with this, I was constantly calling up ASHA. I was like, okay, this is the situation. This is what do I code this as? How I code it? I mean, I was on like I had the personal, direct line,
Right.
that was doing and to be honest, once I realized at some point that in order to treat my patients and my clients in the way that I knew that they needed to be treated, I ended up going to, I fought it for a long time, but I ended up having at that point to go to private pay.
Yeah. I know
And
it's unfortunate, but it's what we have to do.
right, right. And, then I could do the therapy and do the work of what my patients needed. So
Really
it was,
needed.
yes, it was a leap, but it turned out for the
Okay.
best.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tell me how your experience then has led into your book development and what you're doing now.
Oh my goodness. Right, right. Well, Miss Tongue and Friends started off in a therapy session with a little kiddo. And it was one of those sessions when you're like, oh my gosh, everything is going wrong. I am not connecting right. This is not going anywhere. Like, what? what's going wrong? How can I change it? And so this just popped into my head. I was like, is your tongue tired? Is your tongue having a hard time? It's like, yeah. It's like, your tongue is busy all the time. It's busy, busy, busy. It needs to rest.
Hmm.
And the little kiddo was like, yeah, tell me more. And then I said, do you want to have your Miss Tongue rest? Can we talk about that? Sure. I said, and so then I was describing, I said, well, put Mrs. Tongue on her pillow. Do you know where her pillow is? And so I was talking about the
Mm.
incisive papilla area right behind the
Mhm.
teeth. And so he did. And it was like, oh, your your tongue is resting. And then so after that, he just like, yes, this is it. This is it. Okay. And so we just kept talking about that and like, when can your tongue? And so they left and they went back home and all week they talked about putting Miss Tongue on her pillow, putting Miss Tongue on her pillow. Mom texted me in between, was like, oh my gosh, this is going so well. He talks about Miss Tongue getting on his pillow, the pillow. And so then I was like, okay. So then I started using this with more of my clients and then realizing that we're not supposed, excuse me, that was my,
Oh, you're fine.
realizing that we're not supposed to just have the tongue is not the only piece of the puzzle, right?
Mhm.
The lips need to be closed and then the nose needs to be breathing. So Miss Tongue learns to rest evolved into Miss Tongue learns to rest, Mr. Nose learns to breathe, and the lips learn to stay together.
Okay. And
So
they're
that's
friends,
how
right?
they're friends. And that's how Miss Tongue and her friends. And Miss Tongue has lots of friends because there's lots of things, we've got the jaw, we've got the nose, we've got the lips, we've got, the
Wow.
breathing. So
Yeah.
it's and then I tried it out with other clients and they loved it. And so I just kept using it in my practice.
Mhm.
Then the pandemic came and that was a shift in me moving towards making this into something that I could share with other therapists
Mhm.
and parents.
Yeah. So you have a whole series, right?
I do. I do.
Okay, so
There,
talk through this series for me. I'm thinking, how many books can you write about Miss Tongue? But apparently you've written a few.
right, right. I have. So there's Miss Tongue learns to rest, and it's all about getting the talking about Miss Tongue and why she's tired and she needs to rest. And then it's an interactive, like, can you make you
Mm.
just like I wrote it like a therapy session, so to speak, because I'm a therapist,
Yeah.
through and through. And so it's like, and then you celebrate, that the tongue can do this, and then keep practicing. And then there's the same with Mr. Nose learning how to breathe. All of her friends, she and her friends have very important jobs, right?
Mhm.
That's what we talk about is important. And the lips need to learn to have to stay together. And so that's what I'm calling, you can buy them individually. But this is like the healthy oral function bundle, like the three of them together. And
Okay.
then I wrote Miss Tongue Learns to Dance.
Oh,
And so Miss Tongue Learns to Dance is the basic tongue range of motion that's necessary, the basic like movements that are necessary pre and post lingual phrenectomy. So
oh,
I
okay.
wrote in a way it's kind of rhymey and fun and Miss Tongue's a little crazy. She's got a crazy hat on, but it's so that before a kiddo needs to have a frenectomy and
Right.
after they it's a fun way for them to move their tongue around
Mhm.
while in a storybook form.
Yeah. You made it so child-centered, right? Because if we say, put your tongue here, put your tongue here,
Yes,
yeah, it
yes.
doesn't work. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, that's what we have in the Miss Tongue and Friends world right now.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's amazing. And do you have a website where you're selling them?
I do, I do.
Okay.
So it's misstongueandfriends.com. That's the
Okay.
website. And there's a little bit of OMDs or Myo explaining it. There's some there's the products in the store. There's a little tiny bit about me, and trying to make it to where it's friendly enough for new people that want to know about oral myofunctional disorders
Mhm.
and parents, and but also a place to show other people where they can go straight to the products if they already know all the what they need to know about Myo, right? For
Yeah, yeah.
OMDs. So
So my brain is just like spinning right now. I'm thinking, if you don't fix the problem, are you really are you fixing the speech problem then? If you don't fix the oral problem where
oh,
their tongue is.
right. In the cases, yes, in the
Hmm.
cases of where the tongue placement or the efficiency of the tongue to move is
Hmm.
not very efficient. It's not where it
Hmm.
needs to be for the sounds. Yes, it's going to affect the sound. I think about it a lot because like all the sounds, speech sounds are made except for the vowels, okay, are made with our tongue making contact with the palate. In
Hmm.
any like the K and B, the back of the tongue is the tips of the tongue, the sides of the tongue. The tongue is always needing to make contact with the palate, changing tension and shape. If the tongue is down in the mouth, that lag time, it is very inefficient. And that's what affects the clarity and intelligibility of the speech. So if
Okay.
it's already up there, then it's going to sound a lot better. And it's also easier to learn the sounds,
Hmm. Hmm.
have the resting position up against the palate of the
Okay,
tongue.
that makes sense. Now you're still working with kind of a handful of clients, and you're collaborating with some orthodontists. Is that correct?
Right. So a lot of my referrals have been from the orthodontist, and because they see the tongue thrust swallow and they're like, wait a second, this is going to infect treatment outcomes. The teeth are crooked, the teeth, like there's a lot that they see,
Mm.
this structure, and they need the function to be correct or
Right.
optimal in order
Hmm.
for their structure to be optimal with what they're working on. So it's a huge, wonderful, great collaborative relationship
Hmm.
between people who work with have OMD training in their toolbox and speech pathologists. And um, you know, other therapists that have this training can do a good bit of the work about Maya. The speech pathologists are the only ones that can also help with the sound errors that are oftentimes associated with it, with
Okay.
OMDs.
Do most orthodontists kind of seek out a speech therapist, or what is
Um,
that relationship? Are you having to really market it?
oh, that's a great question. Orthodontists that are airway centric and understand, and pediatric
Hmm.
dentists too, that are
Okay.
airway centric and understand the function, how it affects what they're
Hmm.
trying to do, are definitely on board with this. There are a
Okay.
lot that are. There are definitely ones that part of my practice right now is to educate.
Hmm.
Early intervention, prevention by early intervention. And so that's locally, that's what I'm doing. And also not locally, doing is trying to bring this to everyone that's working in the oral health. Like we need to know about OMDs and how they affect the structure and the health and the sleeping and the cognition and all the things we talked about before for the
Yeah.
kiddos. And one of my referral sources that I'm very close to, he had been telling me forever, you need to get to these kids quick sooner, Tricia. We need to get to them sooner
Mhm.
before they get to me when they're 8, 9, 10. And honestly, Miss Tongue and Friends is the answer to his call. Yep.
That's what I just was going to ask you. What age can you treat with this?
So typically you need the kiddos cognitively in order to do oral myofunctional therapy.
Right.
There's a cognitive level that they need to be at. You can start many like Maya at 5, 6,
Mhm.
and the younger kids fall under could be feeding issues, could
Mhm.
be also oral motor ish, and it plays into it, but they are not cognitively prepared to do oral myofunctional therapy.
Mhm.
My books kind of transcend a little bit into like if you start in the reading to the kiddos, repetition, repetition, repetition,
Yeah.
repetition, as soon as they're able to start listening to this, then you can start reading these books to them. And I actually have gone into toddler groups,
Mhm.
preschool, like and have had like 24-month-olds get excited about, the lips going together. And,
Yeah.
so that's the goal, is to like, so before they actually can get to do the OMD therapy, let's start talking to them about it.
Right. They
Let's
need
talk to
awareness of their mouth, right?
and let's teach the parents about it. And that's
Yeah.
why these books are written so that a parent can pick it up and just take it, run with it, read it to their
Yeah.
child.
Oh, that's so neat.
Mm.
I love that. So
Yeah.
for a therapist just starting out in Myo, what are some clinical patterns that um, might be present that they wouldn't have linked to it in the past? So what should they be looking
Yeah.
for?
Like red flags,
Yes, red
snoring,
flags.
snoring, snoring, snoring. Like
Okay.
every questionnaire needs to have what is how, does your child snore? They need to have like, in my opinion, you need to give a sleep. There's a parent questionnaire about sleep. There's a newer one that came out too, but there are plenty of them out there for pediatrics. Snoring, audible breathing, um, uh, messy eating, like drooling. Those are lips not stay together. So these things that don't necessarily fall under, speech therapy, they can affect
Yeah.
it, but it's definitely in that function, like, but the snoring, the, that's a huge one because that's a huge red flag. And then
Okay.
open mouth, tongue low in the mouth breathing. And what I try to tell all the speech pathologists and anyone that I'm mentoring is like, we're trained as speech pathologists to use our ears.
Hmm.
We need to be using our eyes as
Hmm.
much as we use our ears. Because
Yeah.
when you hear what's happening, you can also see what's happening orally if you know
Hmm.
that you to look and that you
Right.
should be looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So you train nationwide, right? You train other speech pathologists nationwide. What do you feel like
I
is, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. Mhm.
Oh, what do you feel like is the biggest misconception or kind of that light bulb moment when you see that professional first dive into the world of myo or
Oh my
OMD
goodness.
dysfunctions?
Yes, yes, yes. It's like the light bulb happens when they see things they didn't see before and they can no longer unsee them. It's like you're like, "Oh,
How did I
like,
not see that, right? How
how
did
did
I
I
miss
not see
that
this
for 20
before?"
years or whatever? Yeah.
Right, right, right. And then, like, you start seeing it in your friends. You start seeing it in people, you just start
Hmm.
and your friends are like, "Are you watching me right now?" It's like, "I'm sorry, I can't turn it off." But yes, we are because this is what we do now. It's
Yeah.
like, you don't know, you can't see what you don't know, but when you know it, you can see it. And then you can
Hmm.
intervene because now we have the tools, learning about OMDs and learning about Myo as it's a great tool in our toolbox that is gaining a lot of understanding and success and support.
Hmm. Hmm. So this is a question that one of my speech therapists had is like, when you're working with a child with a disability, when do you how do you know where to stop? When do you know what optimal, do you stop at optimal function? Or when do you shoot for functional performance?
Good question. Good question.
I guess it would be
Um,
first. backwards, functional and then optimal.
Yes, yes. So there are sometimes there are structural impediments that
Hmm.
one can get over. So in those cases, you do the best that you can with what you have or where the child is. For example, if in cases where I knew that the child needed to have a lingual frenectomy done for better function and lingual range of motion, but mostly function, right? And the parents or were not is wasn't going to get done for whatever reason. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You do what you can given the
Hmm.
situation you're in, and you take them as far as they can go and give them the best chance at having really good oral function. But
Hmm.
you don't just like give up on them because they're not having the bronectomy done. You
Yeah.
just do get them to the point that they can be at for optimal for them. Um, and so that's how I've always been. You give them the information and you tell them, and
Hmm.
then if it's not hurting them, like dangerous to them, you can
Hmm.
keep taking them to that point. If
Right.
it's, yeah. So that's what I say. Like I
Okay.
always, as far as you can go, given the patients. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And you kind of answered it, but a common challenge in clinical practice is carryover, right? So just that ability to navigate for follow through and to determine like, is this kiddo going to be served best through myo-based therapy or should I do something different? Would you say like you
Mhm.
should make that clinical decision or does it matter?
Well, yes, and I mean, I'll have to say, as a therapist that has been doing this for a long time, I have had to, like, I've had to tell patients that we can't continue
Hmm.
because there's no point in that's another, stopper or limitation. Like, there's no point in coming to see me if there's no carryover happening at home. It's
Right.
a waste of money. It's a waste of energy, and it's not good for the kiddo. Like, why come back again and again and have to be told the same thing and make them feel bad?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not something I enjoy doing, but, ethically, there was no point in continuing when I got them to the point where it was a hard stop. Like they were not
Hmm.
going to be able to go any further. And so
Yeah.
you have to trust your clinical gut. And I mean, it takes years to feel confident enough in that.
It
But
does.
the more we keep telling people that are starting out that, we can't fix everything,
Right.
and you do your best, and it's okay to say we have to take a vacation, we have to take a break. Or there was one case when I was like, okay, in order to come back, these things have to happen, and it was very regimented, like, and the kid has to be the buy-in on it, and so, and in some cases they came back and they did it and it was great. In other cases they were like, we can't, and I'm like, that's
Okay.
fine.
That's
You
fine.
can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some
And
did.
some did circle back.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
others didn't.
Hmm. Yeah. And really just educating parent from the beginning that I'm a teacher, giving you the skill set to carry over at home. Yeah. Because there's
Yeah.
this sometimes a conception that we're going to just fix it with our wand.
Yes, right, and especially in our line of work, when you're changing behaviors and habits and patterns that have been there for so long, it's like there has to be a whole team. And I always tell them as like, okay, I'm the head coach, you're the
Yes.
team player, and the parents are the assistant coaches. And
No, I
they're
love
always like,
that.
so that's kind of I can, and building rapport and explaining all of this up front, right from the beginning. And it's like, this is going to be work. We're here to support you. You tell us. And I'm always like, you come back, it's like, well, they didn't practice it. Okay, why not? What do I need to do as a therapist to change the
Right.
homework activity to make it to where it fits with the parents, the child, the lifestyle, the
Yeah.
whatever's going on? Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. So important. So for clinicians
Right.
who are listening that want to dive deeper into myotherapy, where do they start? What could they do?
Oh my goodness. There
Because I'm
is
sure
there
there's a
are
ton, right?
There are organizations that can, that you can get, intensive advanced training in. So
Okay.
when I started there, it was very, very, very difficult to find. There's a lot of information out there. My advice is do your research, find a reputable, you know, uh, place where you know that you're going to get the type of training that you want to have to put into your practice and help your
Hmm.
clients. And
Hmm.
thankfully, there's lots, and there are options of getting certified. And so that's awesome and always a great route to go because of the extension of training and knowledge and the support systems that are in these groups now that are
Yeah.
teaching to people, therapists.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, what's next for Miss Tongue and Friends for you?
Well, um, there is there are a few currently there are 4 books that are making their way out. There's some illustrations that need to be happening. Some of them are geared similar to what we've done before, geared toward the school age version.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to be specifically, these are specifically in a pack for speech pathologists, but also sold separately for the
Okay.
parents. But there's going to be a way to help speech pathologists in the when they're set, the OMDs are secondary to speech, how can you make these work and how can you use this
Mm.
so that's in the works. And then there's one that's pretty close that is about thumb sucking.
Okay. Nice.
Yep.
That is
Yep.
very needed.
Yeah. So yes, yes, yes. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, I love it when the illustrations start to come to life for me after like just put it all together. And that's where we are right now.
Are you illustrating it yourself? Okay.
I found no, 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 no. Um, all my clients and parents would laugh when I would draw things for the kids back,
Me too.
and yeah. So no, no, no. But in oh gosh, it took me a while to get these books to where I was ready to present them to
Mhm.
to people. The illustrator that I found, she was a grad student in speech pathology when I
Okay.
found her. I found her on Instagram, believe it or not. And so she has now since graduated and is working. And so she is the one that is behind the illustrations. And she's, yeah, she's been wonderful to work with. Yeah.
Perfect, because she knows the mouth and knows what you're talking about. Trying to explain this
Right.
to a
Yeah.
graphic artist
So
would be tricky. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's been fun. So it's been really good to and see her, she was in grad school at the time and now she's practicing and it's just like, yes. So by the time we printed the books, she had her, C's to put on the books instead of,
Oh, good.
prior to having her C's. So I love that it took me that long so that that could happen for her. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
And my
I
husband do the graphics some too, to help me out with a few of them, especially Miss Tongue Learns to Dance. It was kind of a combination of her work and his work too. So this was been really fun. Yeah.
Great. Anything else you want the listeners to know about?
Oh my goodness. I'm so grateful. Well, I'm grateful to be here today with you and to
Oh, I'm
talk
grateful
about
to have you. Yeah.
yes. And I'm grateful that there's so many more people that are aware of and are taking training and are working in with children and adults and anyone with OMDs. I mean, because it can span the lifespan, it's the
Mhm.
lifespan. But I'm so excited that there's so many people out there helping because the more that of us that are, the better off the little ones are going to be when they get to be our age. And I don't know, that just makes me excited about the future for that.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's been so fun to learn about it. It's eye-opening. It's just
Yeah.
something that, isn't talked about enough. So hopefully people can listen and kind of get excited about it too.
Yes, and you're a part of that, having me on tonight, right? Or
Well,
today, it's just been, yes, spreading the
yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Tricia.